now for the Shop Report with
Barbershop Jay.
What up, sports fans? Welcome to the Shop Report. I'm Barbershop Jay. I'll be your host for the day. Here's what's happening. Before I get into my dream series, Cubs Indians, and last night's presidential debate, or should I say debacle, I wanted to first take some time to acknowledge the passing of Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez, who died in an unfortunate boating accident a couple of days ago. Now, this is not the first time that something like this has happened, and we all know and have read and heard stories of athletes who who have passed unfortunately or tragically in accidents. But a little closer to home, former Indians pitchers Tim Cruz and Steve Olin also were killed in a boating accident almost 20 years ago. Bobby Ojeda was another pitcher who was also on the boat at the time, suffered severe scalp injuries and lost about 4 pints of blood. But thankfully, he did survive. You know, it's not easy to discuss someone's passing, especially when we don't understand how someone could leave this earth so early, someone who was so promising, or whose career was so promising. And then, too, you know, not just the career, but as a person, the character. You know, of course, I didn't know this young man personally, but you just hate to see anything like this or have to discuss or talk about anything like this. So unfortunate and tragic it was. So I'd like to send my prayers out to the Marlins, Mr. Fernandez's family, and all those he was near and dear to. May he rest in peace. Now, begrudgingly, I'd like to discuss or talk about my dream series, Cubs versus Indians. First off, I'd like to point out that the Indians' path to the World Series is a far more challenging or daunting one than that for the Cubs. The Indians got to deal with the Rangers, possibly, the Rangers, Orioles, and most definitely the Red Sox. If the playoffs started today, they'd play the Boston Red Sox, and we all know the Boston Red Sox history, and David Ortiz's history against the Indians, and Dustin Pedroia. Yes, and the fact that Terry Francona was once the manager for these vaunted Red Sox. The thing that's most concerning to me when it comes to the Indians and their path to this year's World Series, possibly, is their road record. As of right now, they are 38-39 on the road. Now, that's not atrocious. But when you think about possibly having to go to Texas, and even though you may have home field advantage over the Red Sox, no, because I'll take that back. The Indians are a 3 seed, would be a 3 seed, I believe, and the Red Sox would be a 2 seed. So, I mean, the majority of the games the Indians would have to play throughout the course of this playoff run or this postseason run, they're going to be played on the road in Boston, at Texas, possibly. And the Orioles might not get in because they got to face the Blue Jays. But I don't know. That Mark Trumbo, we'll get to him in a minute. But Mark Trumbo, he's a problem for the Indians as well. So you got to look at it, you know. I mean, of course, and I think they will. The Orioles will probably face off against the Blue Jays. Like I said, I think the Orioles have beat the Blue Jays. And then they'd go to Texas, or they'd face Texas, and then of course you'd have the Indians and the Red Sox. But I don't see the Orioles getting past the Rangers. But if they do, and somehow the Indians could get past the Red Sox, they face a multitude of problems, ultimately. Whereas the Cubs, excuse me, on the other hand, you know, they got to deal with the Nationals, the Mets, the Giants, and the Dodgers. Now, we all know that the Giants have a most recent World Series history, whose World Series history is more recent than that of the Dodgers and the Mets. But of the four, the Giants pose somewhat of a problem for these Cubs because of the Giants' experience. But at the same time, there's something going on with the Giants this year that when watching them, their record may be winnable, but what I'm seeing from them is anything but, especially with Bumgarner here lately, going after batters and challenging batters and wanting to get into fights and so on and so forth. They seem to be somewhat in disarray. So I don't think that they will pose as much of a problem for the Cubs, nor the Dodgers, Mets, or Nationals as would the Red Sox, Orioles, or Rangers for the Indians. Not to mention, let me back up here. The Indians' road record, I said, is 38-39. Well, let me tell you what their record is against the teams they would have to possibly go through to get to the World Series. They are 0-3 on the year against the Orioles on the road, 1-2 versus the Red Sox, and 1-3 versus the Rangers. Now, I get that regular season is not the postseason. When you get to the playoffs, everybody starts off 0-0. But there are some things that you can take from the regular season that are postseason translatable. And your road record is one of those things, in my estimation. Now, despite the Indians winning 90 games and winning the Central Division, yay, something we were all here in Cleveland accustomed to during the mid-90s, their road record against the teams that they're going to have to face on the way to the World Series, I'm not saying it's going to be a problem, but you cannot dismiss it. Throw in the fact that you have no Michael Brantley, no Carrasco, no Gomes, who was an integral part, catalyst, if you would, to the Indians' defense. Seeing how the catcher has a lot of responsibility behind the plate. And pitchers have a level of comfort with a catcher that they're used to, as opposed to a catcher that they're not used to. And I just know, watching the Indians, not maybe for a whole lot of games this season, but enough of them with Gomes in them to know that they had a level of comfort with Gomes that his absence could very well play a factor in this playoff run. And I forgot Salazar. Now, I don't know how true this is, but Salazar, who is having some arm or forearm issues, may be coming back or possibly coming out of the bullpen for the Indians. So that's a good thing. Not necessarily that he's coming out of the bullpen. I don't care where he's coming from or how they get, but just as long as he's there, okay, that just adds more fortitude to moving forward or advancing throughout this bracket. Because let me say again, trying to go through the Red Sox, Orioles, or Rangers, I mean, they're not the bad boy Pistons, but my goodness. Don't turn your head. But I got to also say about this Indian squad this year, although they don't wow you to the degree that those Indians teams of the mid-90s did, there's something about this squad. And then, of course, you know, I mentioned Francona, and this could be the reason why, but they have a resiliency that you cannot quantify. And a lot of times that has a lot to do with winning and losing, or the outcomes, whether they're in your favor or not in your favor, in games. They have a never say die. And as I've heard pro athletes in various sports say in post-game conferences, you know, players look at the chief, the captain. If he's not panicking, we're not panicking. So with Terry Francona at the helm, who, as I mentioned earlier, was the manager of these vaunted Red Sox, he should have the blueprint to be able to get past these guys. And the Rangers or Orioles as well, all the way to the World Series. But then again, that's why they say paper ain't what playing is. You still got to play the games. So I love the fact that the Indians have won 90 games, and they got Terry Francona, and they got guys like Francisco Lindor, who I think is just a spark plug who's here to stay. I mean, I just love watching this dude play, man. You know, I'm not a big baseball fan, but I am fan enough of the game to watch the game and be impressed by the skill level it takes, despite all the HGH and performance-enhancing chitter-chatter, for the hand-eye coordination. When a batter's at the plate and you see a guy connect on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and he send it 500, whatever it is, down the left field, or even center field, which is the deepest part of most ballparks, the deepest part of a ballpark, and he sent it over, I mean, not just right over the wall, but, you know, out in the parking lot, man, that takes skill. Yeah, it's not NFL football skill. No, it's not boxing professional Floyd Mayweather Ali skill. And it's not reverse pivot, dribble, inside NBA skill. But still, nonetheless, it takes a skill. No matter how many performance enhancers you take, it ain't got nothing to do with hand-eye coordination, at least in my estimation. So, can the Indians get all the way to the World Series? Possibly. But it's not probable. Because there's a reason why that the things on paper are those things on paper. Now, not everything on paper is pertinent, again. But they can't be totally dismissed either. And then I will say, too, adding Coco Crisp or bringing Coco Crisp back into the fold. Man, all of a sudden I'm hungry. I want some cereal. Yeah, but bringing Coco Crisp back into the fold, that was pretty good for the Indians. I think that was a good pickup for the Indians. Because I don't know how, when, where, and in what situations it may occur. But if the Indians can get Lindor and Crisp on them bases, we talking about Kenny Lofton reincarnate. At least to some degree. Yeah, clap it up. That's how much I like both of these cats. Table setters, just grinded out type ball players. Ramirez, Nyquin. And now let me not forget to mention Napoli, Mike Napoli, the cagey veteran. Because I've had this conversation with guys before in the shop and various other places about veterans and the impact of veterans and the importance of veterans on a team. You can't just add a veteran for the sake of adding a veteran to a squad. Case in point, I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, but I got to use him just for this example. Vinny Testaverde, you all can look him up. He was a quarterback in the NFL for many, many, many years, probably many more years than he should have been. But he was a veteran. But was he a productive veteran? Yeah, he put up a lot of numbers and a lot of points, but he threw a lot of interceptions too. So you don't add a veteran to your roster just for the sake of adding a veteran. But are you adding the kind of veteran who could have the kind of impact on your team that could carry you throughout a postseason? So are you adding a veteran because he got a lot of years or miles on him? Or are you adding the kind of veteran who could be a difference maker? And Mike Napoli, in my estimation, is that kind of veteran. He don't strike that kind of fear that Albert Bell did when Albert was at the plate, or Manny Ramirez even. But I tell you what, make a mistake if you want to, especially with cats on them bags. Yeah, because they all going to come around that plate. When I watch this dude, and I done said it to y'all before, you know my thing is that eye test. I go by what I see more so than what's been said. You know, like my man Karras will say. He said, she said, but she said she didn't. Nah, I don't get off into that. I just know when Mike Napoli is at the plate, more often than not, like I said, you better not make a mistake. Because the end result going to be a crooked number. And you know what else the Indians, or this version of the Indians, haven't done that I've seen so many Indians teams of years past do? You turn the game on, it could be the first inning, second inning, early on in the game. And it seems like already they are behind. The opposition didn't put up already 2, 3, 4 runs. Now, that's happened a few times, but not as often as it seemed this year as opposed to years past. And then when it does happen, it doesn't take this Indians team 6 or 7 innings to make up that run, that difference. I saw a game earlier this season. I can't remember who they were playing. I turned it on, sit down, got my chips and my hot dogs and all. I'm getting ready to sit down and watch the Indians game, right? I turned it on. Bam, no sooner my backside hit the couch cushion and the pitcher come up, it was 3-0. Bottom of the first. I'm like, oh, my gosh, here we go again. But when the Indians came up in that frame, in that bottom, before they went to the next break, the Indians was up 5-3. That's what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be down to have to come back. You get what I'm saying? So I've seen them be down and come right back, as opposed to, again, taking a few innings to come back. And then I've also seen where they strike first. That's really what you want. And in the pitching staff, it's been pretty good. I like the fact that Kluber's going to go out there, first. We're going to start off with Kluber and his 18 wins. But that postseason, though, boy. And then after Kluber, really, you got Bauer. You got to cross your fingers with him sometime, And I'd like to see if Salazar is back in the action. I'd like to see for him maybe, depending on how things go, I'd like for him to get a start. But, with the forearm issues or whatever, we don't know. Or it might be Carrasco. Maybe I'm confusing the two. But anyway, after Kluber, man, if we don't have a Carrasco or a Salazar, I'm crossing my fingers. And then again, we talking about postseason. Guy can win 18 games and get in that postseason. It's a different type of animal in that round. And you don't have 162 games now. Now you're down to 7. So now what you going to do? Down to 7 or 7-11? You going to get you a big gulp or a little sip? And if you're talking about taking a sip, go and take you a dip in the pool. because you will be going home early. Now, for the Cubs, on the Cubs side of things, I got two names for you as to why the Cubs are what they are this year and why their chances for winning the World Series, some of y'all might not like this, to me are far greater than the Indians. Theo Epstein and manager Joe Maddon. Theo Epstein deservedly signed a 5-year extension. But I got to agree with ESPN Mike Greenberg in saying he's still basically underpaid. It's still a steal for a guy like a Epstein. How many times have we looked at teams, especially teams like the Browns? Yeah, I always got to throw them in there somewhere. Disgusting. We talk about organizations, professional sports organizations, and how they're built. And it starts at the top, and then it works its way down. Well, who better to have at the top of your organization than a Theo Epstein? And then as an extension, a Joe Maddon. Now, I'm not knocking the Indians boys over there, Antonetti and all them type cats. Even though I'm not really feeling Dolan. That whole, y'all pay for it first, then I'll do something. I digress. But, you think about it. Look at the NFL, the Patriots, the Packers, the Spurs. These organizations, and the Cavs here actually more recently. I am impressed more so with David Griffin, the general manager, than I am Dan Gilbert. But the point is, the most successful, the Steelers, of course, the most successful organizations have what I call the load-bearing wall or the immovable foundation. And that's exactly what the Cubs have. And in doing so, or in Epstein and Maddon, not only are they here today, but I think they'll be here tomorrow as well. Because these guys have, especially Maddon and Epstein, they have an eye for, like those other organizations that I mentioned, the Steelers, the Spurs, the Patriots, they have an eye for acquiring the types of players who I don't want to say necessarily fit their system, but who understand, or whose learning curve for understanding what it takes to win is shorter than those whose organizations are hell-bent on sensationalism and the sexy. Because that's just temporary. In Epstein and Maddon, the Cubs, they're going to be around for a while. And not to mention, my gosh, their pitching staff. Because we all know now, when it comes to baseball, pitching beats great hitting. Ask the Indians about the Atlanta Braves in 1995 when they had to deal with Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz. And if you out there, if any of you all out there remember that Indians team or any of those Indians teams in the mid-'90s, especially that 95 team, man, it seemed like every time them cats came to the plate, man, they were sending it out the yard. They had the big bats. They those Indians teams, all the offense, they could do it all. The bloop singles and they could manufacture runs. But, they was more so known for the power, the pop, the long ball. Man, Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddox got a hold of them boys, man. And we all know how that ended. So good pitching can beat great hitting. Great pitching, oh, man, you can forget about any types of hitting. And just with these names alone, Arrieta, Chapman, Lackey, Lester, come on, man. The Cubs, just with those names alone, are dangerous. Then on top of that, their on-base percentage is wicked too. 344. second in the majors. See, the Cubs won 100-some-odd games this year. And in relation to most sports, you see a team win a lot of games, be like, wow, man, hey, we've seen it in football, we've seen it more recently here with the Cavs and the Warriors. The Warriors won 17 million games and went home crying. That whole see if the locker room still smell like champagne sort of thing? Yeah. So winning a lot of games is not a guarantee for anything. But how you went about winning those games is. That on-base percentage, there's a correlation between that and 100 and some odd wins, to me. And then the batting average, the team batting average is about a 256 or something. Then the ERA, 3.1 Trey. Now, don't get it twisted now. The Indians, they right there. They team batting average is 262. And the team ERA is 3.87. But we all know when it comes to Major League Baseball, the American League, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the style of play. I couldn't tell you. But the scores, the American League scores are more like football scores, NFL scores. Whereas the National League scores for most games are like soccer or hockey. Now, is that because the pitching is better? I don't know. Now, you might have your sprinkles in, your 9 5s and your 12 7s and your 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 team. You know what I mean. But it's just something about that National League, man. All the runs that the American League score, it seems like when it get down to the nitty gritty or at the end, it seemed like them National League, man, them pitchers in the National League, man, they don't mess around. Unless Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw. And then you like Tony Romo. Your regular season numbers are fantastic. I think Clayton Kershaw's QBR rating is 99.999. 599. But his postseason record, no for over. Like Romo's. They two just don't seem to mesh. Now, y'all figure that out. And then let me know. Get back to me and let me know. But then again, man, at the end of the day, I would love to see this series. Because I grew up watching baseball, Major League Baseball, with my grandfather. He was an Indians and a Cubs fan. Oh, my gosh. Andre Dawson. All I ever heard him talk about was Bob Feller. Because rest his soul, he was around for that 48 World Series and the 54 and the 95 and the 97. But the Cubs and the Indians, those were his two teams. And then the history of these two franchises. I mean, they go back a ways, from a social standpoint, from a baseball standpoint, sports standpoint. They go back a ways. They do. And it's about time to get some new blood in the World Series. With no disrespect to the Rangers and the Red Sox and the Nationals and all them other teams. I know the Nationals haven't been in it, but I'm just saying, all those other teams, the sexy teams, the all the time on TV type teams. Let some quote unquote underdogs get there. And we know the Cubs have been around for so long, and then the misery that they've suffered, the Bartman, the 1844, 44, 445 year We know that. We know that. Yeah, it's been a long time. So it's about time that these two storied franchises play for all the marbles in this year's fall classic. Who wouldn't want to see that anyway? If you're a baseball fan, if you're a sports fan in general, why wouldn't you want to see the Cubs and the Indians? Exactly. So, at the end of the day, I think the Cubs and the Indians will make for a better story on the sports landscape than just about anything here in recent memory. Yes, the Cavs won an NBA championship last year. And we all know that this, despite the ineptitude, is still a Browns town. Cleveland, that is. But I just think if the Indians were to get to the World Series and win, that feeling will last a little bit longer than it did for the Cavs. But I'm just saying, that's just me. We shall see. Y'all get ready for some baseball. It's on. And then last but not least, I have got to spit a few words about yesterday's, shouldn't have never been A's, presidential debate. Or should I say presidential debacle. Listen, I am an independent. I don't believe in party affiliation for the sake of. Because as people living on this planet, in our day-to-day, everyday, we should all seek to achieve balance. The Chinese call it yin and yang. Balance. I believe we have to have a little bit of both, conservative and liberal. If I go to a store looking for a TV or just about anything that I would like to purchase, I have to ask myself, is it a want or a need? And if I decide that it's not a need, well, I'm being what? In my opinion, a little bit conservative. On the flip side, you run into a homeless guy or somebody who's down on their luck or somebody who doesn't have the things that you have and you'd like to help them out. And you say, hey, look, I'll give you X, Y, and Z, or I'll show you X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. I might not give you the cash, but I'll give you a ride to go get the job or go to them. You're being a little liberal. Now, I might not be hitting on all cylinders here or knocking down all the nuts and bolts of this liberal conservative thing, but you all get the idea. These two candidates, Hillary and I don't even know what his last name is. Trump, Flump, Stump. I turned the TV on, man, and started watching this thing in English. And before I know it, I had switched to Telemundo or the Telemundo channel. I'm watching the debate, and I didn't even watch it all in its entirety, but I'm watching the debate on the Telemundo channel, and I'm trying to tell you, it made more sense in Spanish than it did in English. That's how atrocious both of these candidates are. I'm telling you, man. The guy says, I'm like, dang. I said, boy, if he ain't making no sense, I don't know who is right now. And how in the world can you sit and listen to anything Trump's saying and you're looking at the same time at this hairpiece? I mean, come on, man. I thought The retractable roofs at stadiums was on point. This thing here, man, it's got to have some Velcro. It's got to have something. And when he ain't sleeping, he ain't going to bed with that thing on. He's got some sort of kickstand that he put that thing on at the end of the night, man. Then he put it on just like a helmet in the morning. He roll. He roll out like a cowboy. No shower, no nothing. He cowboying it. John Wayne is what we call it. He out. Then Hillary, on the other hand, bless her little heart. I don't care if she lied about email. I don't care about. Listen, we have a plague in this country right now. Lives are being taken unnecessarily. And didn't neither one of these folks say nothing about what they going to do about folks being killed for no reason whatsoever. All in all, it was the same old rhetoric, the same old. What I'm going to do is close the door. Then Trump. What I'm going to do is put my shoes on the wrong feet. We all know how that end up. You can put your shoes on the wrong feet if you want to. But in this case, I don't even think he's putting his shoes on. I don't think his shoes on the wrong feet. I think he's just putting on two left shoes, period. Man, this dude is all the way gone. Neither one of them made no sense whatsoever. None. Ain't talking about vote. Yes, voting matters. But not so much in this primary. To me, it's the secondary. It's the congressionals and the council people in your local areas. You know, like this thing I talked about last time we met. Cleveland's Fight for 15 issue. And then here recently, you know, the report cards for Cleveland schools come out. You know, they all Fs. But the powers that be down here asking the taxpayers who already spent for more money so that they can spend on what? Trips to Cabo San Lucas? You got me bent. I'm giving y'all a dime. And they want to say no to the people that they've been pilfering from, to an increase in wage. No, this is where that's where the vote is at. This go round, that's where you should be voting at. This is what you should be focusing your vote on right here. Getting folks like that, it's the lower level crooks. You got to get them out. Them governmental crooks, man, they're going to be crooks as long as it's a government. Because a simple question was posed. How is it that a country that prints its own money is in any type of deficit? Man, you've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, scammed, connived, indoctrinated, conditioned, colonialized. Man, y'all better go get that black pills called denigitized. Excuse my French fries. But I ain't trying to be cry. Is the point I'm trying to make to you ultimately. You got to vote for one of these two. And it ain't about the lesser of two evils or none of that garbage. But when I go to vote for whichever candidate, it's going to be almost like protocol when I see their name. I'm not saying who I'm voting for. No. But when it come time for them lower level crooks, I'm going to be all in. The focus is going to be sharp. I'm talking about like a Kobe Bryant with 3 seconds left sharp. Because you're only going to get one shot. I'm concentrating my efforts this go round on getting these low level crooks up out of here. And the same should be said for all the low-level crooks in every other state in this godforsaken country. Get them out of here. Well, y'all, it's been fun, but we got to run. I appreciate y'all, as always, for listening to Shop Report. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Email us at theshopreport365gmail.com. And remember, the next time you want to know what's really going on, come to the shop. Walk-ins are always welcome. Holla.